The countless incompetencies, excuse me, within physics, which is purely atomistic by its very nature, and I call it the cult of bumping particles. The one thing that it rests upon, by their own definition, is the explanation of light, and their immense confusion over something so incredibly simple as wave-particle duality, as they love to put it. They love to talk endlessly about the double slit experiment. Now, I have a video from some time ago. I could recreate it if I have to, or actually take a laser and point it at a needle, just the shaft of the needle, which of course is nothing other than a simple rod. You do not need a double slit experiment to replicate the results of the double slit experiment. We have constructive, destructive banding interference. You get the same thing from shooting a single point source, which people think that laser light is coherent, which it is ultimately attributionally, but as a point source illumination, that you can get the exact same interference pattern banding from shooting a laser directly at a needle, and the resultant pattern that is left on a white sheet of paper after doing that. But the notion that light is a particle or a wave-particle duality, as the idiot Einstein in the cult of quantum has reified it as, this is completely absurd. A wave does not even exist. A wave is not a thing, rather what a thing does. Light is a coaxial circuit, necessitatively so, longitudinal pulse perturbations along the dielectric line of the field perturbation. We can say conventionally propagation, but nothing emits light, nor does light have a speed. It's a rate of induction. And of course resultant transverse electrical magnetic to the pulse perturbation of the dielectric, whether that's linear or circular polarization. But light is certainly not a particle. This pulse perturbation, or a string of beads, if you will, as a simple visual analogy within your head, is where the notion of the photon came from. Obviously so, the smaller the space, the higher the capacitance. Example being in the electromagnetic spectrum. The really, really dangerous crap is the electromagnetism, not that's extremely huge in volume and frequency, which would be lower frequency, but incredibly, incredibly, incredibly small. The stuff that will actually break your body's cells apart and kill you forthwith is the smallest spatial footprint of electromagnetism that there is. We're talking upwards of gamma and beyond gamma. But this notion of a wave-particle duality is the most laughable bullshit that I've actually come across in, examining the stupidity superficially from, Platonic and retroductive perspective, where we actually take a logical examination at what light is. That a wave is not a thing. It does not exist. There's no such thing as a wave. There is something that is waving, but a wave is not a goddamn thing. There's no such goddamn thing as a wave. Excuse my cussing, but I have to cuss. I keep hearing these idiot physicists, which are atomists and mathematicians who believe they can quantify anything and everything, reifying something that does not exist. A wave is a connotation of something doing something, it being in motion as implicitly defined. So a light cannot be a wave. Talking about the electromagnetic waving of the coaxial circuit of light is something else, but certainly there are no particles involved. The constructive and destructive interference that you would see at shooting a laser light or a single very tiny light source at either the needle, as I proved, or the double slit experiment that they love to talk about endlessly. Oh, the duality of the double slit experiment. There's no confusion there. You need to stop looking at light as either a particle or a wave. What's happening is you've set up a spatial interference in which phase is introduced. Phase and a spatial interference are one and the same thing, just as space is denotatively the resultant effect of divergent magnetism in creation, that you end up with an interference of the disturbance which we call light, and that disturbance is an interference pattern. That interference pattern is the light manifesting its perturbation through either around the single needle or the double slit. It doesn't make any difference, and when you have that interference, you have that phase, then you actually have constructive and destructive interference. You'll actually see that on the wall or the white sheet of paper. It's ridiculous that something so simple confounds the minds of these idiots with PhD. There must be like 100 different books about the double slit experiments, and maybe 1,000 books and tens of thousands of articles about the dual nature. Now, this is the idiot Einstein, the moronic idiot that he is. And by the way, Nikola Tesla called Einstein a fuzzy-haired crackpot for a reason. Einstein's words were on wave-particle duality. He says, and neither one of them explains light on their own, but together they do. The most fundamental thing that any of these idiot scientists have never fathomed is the most fundamental illegal law of nature or Mother Nature, and specifically it would be called natura naturans, not that anybody knows what the hell that means, is that there are no dualities in nature. There's only human stupidity, confusion thereof, which would manifest a concept of a duality, but there are no dualities in nature. I mean, that's the most absurd BS that could ever exist. To think that duality, Mother Nature plays cards in the in the realm of duality is ridiculous. There are no dualities in nature. A duality in nature is antithetical to the denotation of natura naturans, or the cosmos aitos and the cosmos nuitos, collectively meaning the entire cosmos, both as manifest and as unmanifest, i.e. from macro to micro, and sub-Cartesian, which would be metaphysics, of course, or the cosmos aitos. The cosmos aitos. There we go. Choking on those ancient Greek words. You don't say them that often out loud. I'm always thinking them, but I'm never saying them across my lips. But this is just light being out of phase by encountering a boundary. A boundary, of course, is a spatial boundary, and anything that is spatial is temporal. Time is purely the reification of a measure of magnitudes or between magnitudes. So when you enter a interference of something being out of phase and you introduce a boundary, a spatial boundary, then light becomes its own interference, wherein which it's passed through across the needle or passed through the double slit experiment. You have interference of constructive and destructive. It's really simple, and there certainly are no waves and there are no particles going on there. What we have is a phase interference introduction across the propagation of whatever is set in motion, in this case light or coherent. It doesn't matter if it's light or incoherent light. Yeah, wave particle duality, my ass. Duality duality in nature is impossible. Duality is the huge concept dreamt up by stupid human beings to explain things they don't understand, since there are no dualities in nature. And by the way, that's not my idea. I mean, that's the premise of all hardcore monistic metaphysics, be it both Indian or Greek or even Aristotelian, and certainly so the Egyptians. The wisest minds who ever lived laughed at the notion, and do laugh at the notion, of a duality in nature. I mean, that's purely BS. That actually forms the basis of Advaita Vedanta or Shankaracharya, meaning non-dualism. There are no dualities in nature. It's just a misapprehension of what the hell is going on. To think that there's a duality in nature is as stupid as thinking that the head of a coin is something totally different than the tail of the coin, or that the two are competing and form a duality of nature. It's like, no, it's just different aspects of the same friggin' coin. Human beings are so stupid and intellectually unevolved at that, to be sure, to be absolutely certain. This is the hysteresis of wisdom in the human condition. These idiot scientists are nothing more than atomists. They're empiricists. They are mathematicians. And a mathematician at its very fundamental core is someone who only believes in quantifying and counting things. Modern scientist is not a scientist, he's a mathematician. Now, we got nothing against math, but the most important things cannot be quantified. But that idea is complete heresy to a mathematician. They are bean counters by definition. They only believe in crap if they can count it, stack it up, and nature doesn't work that way. Fields cannot be quantified, and everything is a field. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and there's the short explanation of the fallacy of the double slit experiment and the wave-particle duality, neither of which exists. Neither is it wave, neither is it particle, and there sure as hell is no goddamn duality. So, lux veritas. Goodbye.